Welcome to another episode of Moonshots. This one is very special to me. Today, I get to talk to someone I have absolute great admiration for. He has been my mentor, our coach, our children's coach and children's mentor. Very rarely you get to meet someone like him. So I am just so fortunate that I can bring his wisdom to all of you. So, Bill, welcome to Moonshots.
Thank you, Naveen. Nice to be shooting for the moon here with my old friend and with the reference to your family. And so I admire your family greatly. And you and Anu have three great kids there. And so it's great to be with you here today.
So, Bill, let's get this started here. I want to just, have you talk about your journey, and as you have looked at life, you've seen millions and millions of young people doing amazing things, and yet some of the people who are just not being able to achieve their full potential. So people who are listening to it, who want to achieve the moonshot, what does it take to get to the moonshot?
Yeah, well, it is a great journey, Naveen, and so I've seen many sides of it because I'm old, and I've seen a lot of the world, and I've seen a lot of the upside and the downside of the world, and I appreciate the world, and I appreciate being an American and what it means to be from this great country. But in the big picture of things, after a while, we look at people in a different lens. You want to describe your background a little bit, just about, who you are, what have you done? Or if not, I'm going to have to do that for you. So here's a gentleman, Admiral Bill Owens. He is a Rhodes Scholar, White House Fellow, head of Navy, 4-star Admiral, and then Vice Chairman of Joint Chief of Staff. Not someone you get to meet every day. Someone who has seen the war and has seen peace. You can't get peace unless you've seen what it really means not to have a peace. So, Bill, with that context, I want to just have you continue the journey. Yeah, well, thanks, Naveen. So I'm from North Dakota. I grew up in a trailer house. My family was really poor, even in a very poor community. I was blessed to be the product of a village, Bismarck, North Dakota, and all the good people who were around a village like that, teachers, churches, and a great St. Bernard dog who helped me to grow up as a young man. So had never been out of the state of North Dakota. When I got a chance to go to the Naval Academy, it was my only chance to go to college. I had never seen the oceans. I had never seen an African-American person. I was 18. And all of a sudden, the only way it looked like I could go to college was to go to this place where they wore white uniforms and carried swords, the Naval Academy. And so I applied to the Naval Academy and went there. And that started me on that journey. But I have seen a lot in the form of the politics of Washington, the politics of the Pentagon, and wars. And the downside, I was a nuclear submarine, so I spent a big share of my life underwater, a lot of it under the North Pole. And
what were you doing under North Pole?
So, it was the Cold War, and we weren't there because it was cold. We were there because that's where the Soviet big submarine launching missile submarines were. And we were there for that reason, for a variety of different purposes. So I commanded a couple of nuclear submarines. And then, as you mentioned, I was very fortunate to become very senior in the Navy and with a lot of experiences in the Pentagon. I was 6th Fleet Commander during the first Desert Storm War. And so I've seen a lot of sympathy, a lot of the upside and downside of the world. And then I've had a blessed time after that for 20 years in business. So,
Bill, obviously you have been very, very successful in every career you have had, both in the military and then post after that. You are currently the chairman of CenturyLink. You're on the board of Wipro, and you have been a board of tens of public companies, Polycom to Symantec and others. We have been very fortunate that we have worked together for 20 years, and you have been on the board of almost every company that I've started. So we've been very, very fortunate to have your blessings and your wisdom. But I still remember as our children were growing up and you mentoring them. And I remember our oldest once came to you and said, I'm going to college and I want to have fun. And you sat him down and you explained to him what is his responsibility.
Well, it is, you have three great kids, as I mentioned. And my view is when they have such talent and such ability to contribute, that this is not just about making money and it's not just about having fun. It really is thinking early about contribution to the world. And I think it means ultimately their great happiness also by doing that. And so I always love talking to your three children, Neil and Priyanka and Ankur, about that. And I believe in that. And I guess the other thing you notice relatively early in people is that there are straight A students and there are people who contribute to philanthropic causes, but there is something special about some who are going to change the world. And so I've thought a little bit with a couple of great men in the world today. I'm not one of those.
Oh, you are, Bill.
I'm not. But I've thought about what would be the great philanthropy. And I think the great philanthropy would be to get quite a lot of money together to choose the 1,000 most capable young men and women in the world and then expose them to each other, teach them about each other, have them spend time around the world together, and then by that time you would die, but they would lead the world. Because I think if you could find those 1,000 people like that, they exist today. I happen to think some of your kids are in that category. But I think I've only met 10 of them, 10 people like that in my life. So you have to ask yourself, what is it that's special about those people? Because there's a lot of straight A
Exactly
students.
what I was going to ask you. What does it take to be those top 1,000 people in your opinion?
So it's a little bit of your intuition and where you came from and the inner feelings you have. And it's a little bit of magic that all human beings have. When we see it, you know it. I mean, it's a little bit of when you see a duck, you know a duck. But try to describe him, and you have difficulty with that. So I believe a lot of it is the way they are. It's a lot of the way they present. It's their body language. You can sense it. You see it in the debates recently. It's not just what they say. It's the way they are.
So who do you think the leader there was?
No, I'm not going to get there. But you could just tell the moments when that happens, and so. Sometimes it's something else, but in many instances it is that, I think. And then coupled with that ability to recognize how to make a difference and being willing to talk about it. So few young people today. I find this especially true in China. But it's true here too. You find the typical successful 20-year-old. And they're not, the first words out of their mouths don't go to how they're going to change the world, how they're going to solve issues of the world. It's always something else. And so when you have that spirit that I'm going to contribute to humankind, I'm going to do all I can in my own way to be my own Mother Teresa or whoever, then I think there's something special about that body language and that way you are that changes everything. And And you can do it in many ways. I mean, you've done it in the world of entrepreneurship, hence the Moonshot or your company Viome. And so you don't take little shots, you take big shots. And so
what is your moonshot, Bill? I mean, you are doing some amazing things. You're not talking about something that I even dream about it, right? You're looking at a world, picture about how does U.S. and China, instead of looking at each other like an enemy, you're looking at a balanced budget. You're looking at finding these 1,000 great people who can come together and change the world. You're trying to bring China and U.S. together and China and India together. And, you're trying to get this whole world come together for one single purpose to benefit this humanity. Yeah. What is your moonshot?
Well, you should keep talking because I love those words. And but it is true that I think if you look at I'm a little upset about the national media and what we talk about as the major issues. It isn't President Trump's last tweet. It's something that's very different. So I do believe that the two great problems facing our children today are the U.S.-China relationship. China will be the largest country in the world in 15 years.
When you say largest in terms of population or the largest in terms of?
Largest in terms of total gross domestic product.
Wow.
And therefore, the United States will, in many, many ways, be number two. We've never been number two in this country, and I think we need to get used to it. And we need to understand that the Chinese people are great people. They've had a great history. They've done remarkable things. They've never invaded anyone's land and held it. And they have made more people better off in a short period of time than any society in the history of the world. And so, besides that, we were their allies in World War II. And there is an argument that we would not have won the war in the Pacific without the Chinese. No one says that except me.
But here's the thing, Bill. I mean, we were allied with Soviet Union also in World War II, but that didn't make us, suddenly that you would say they're our friends.
No, we were allied with them, but we were not in Russia protecting Russians. We were in China with the Flying Tigers and General Stilwell and General Chennault defending the Chinese. And if you want to go to some soulful place, go to Chengdu in the western part of China, where there's an American cemetery with 1,000 young Americans buried. These were the fighter pilots and the Americans who died defending the Chinese against the outrageous Japanese onslaught of China, where they lost 20 million people, as many as the Russians lost. And we lost 400,000. So the Chinese suffered hugely at the hands of the Japanese.
But why isn't China on their knees worshiping us if we saved them?
Well, we have also been ones who have saved them in many other ways. We saved them with the WTO. Mm-hmm. We saved them with many of the openings that we've made available through our products and our universities. And as you know, we have 300,000 Chinese students in America today studying in the U.S. So I think we need to welcome them and make them familiar with the American way, because that way they will understand who we are. And many of them, there may be some of those 1,000 in that group who will go back. And just like President Xi's visits to the United States as a teenager have changed his attitude as a leader, and many Chinese leaders today feel the same way. So I happen to think that the Chinese tend to like Americans a lot. And if we can find common ground and understand each other's side of the story, this game will change a lot, and our kids will be much better off. I can tell you the defense budget is too large. We don't want to continue spending this money on defense. We want to spend it on technology advancement, education, healthcare, and our people. And we spend, arguably, in my view, 40% too much on the defense budget.
Let's change the subject a bit here. I mean, let's talk about the idea of individuals and a small group of people making a difference. And you obviously have seen great people coming out of every different environment, every different family structure there. What would be your advice to people who are listening to it and saying, it's okay for Bill to say that now, but what would I do today that could make a difference in my family's life and in this country and in this world?
Yeah, so I think it's really important for mom and dad to be talking to the kids about the who they could be in a way that comes from the heart of mom and dad, as much as they can be objective, and to give the kids an opportunity to form their own vision about how to have their lives led in the most profitable, I don't mean money profitable, but the most useful ways. And so I have failed in my family.
But Bill, no, you have not failed. I know your son.
Those discussions.
No, Bill, I know your son, and I tell you, he's absolutely an amazing human being,
you.
A great entrepreneur, great businessman. I think you have done an amazing job, Bill, and I don't think you would ever have to look back there. The question I was going to ask you slightly differently. You mentioned that you grew up, in very humble background in North Dakota. What got you to think that you can be a Rhodes Scholar? You can be one of the top 2 people in the whole world running this whole defense. I mean, every arm of military. What got you to even dream that big?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Naveen. I mean, it happens gradually, doesn't it? I mean, you don't start saying, I'm going to do that. I mean, it didn't happen in my case. It happened to me through Oxford, I think.
But how do you end up in Oxford? It's not easy.
I was a physics and mathematics guy. And then I had a chance to go to Oxford. And
because you were a Rhodes Scholar, Bill, right?
And so I went there, and my Don, my professor, said to me, I don't think you belong here, Bill. He said, you're a smart guy, but you write papers. He held up a paper in his hand, and it had a bunch of red circles. He said, did you come to Oxford to learn how to punctuate? Did you want to find out how you do grammar? Is that why you came here? Or did you come to be creative? He said, you have no creativity. So at Oxford, it's one-on-one for all your courses. And he said, I can find you a good place to go in the U.S., Harvard or MIT or somewhere, but you don't belong here. And I thought to myself, are you kidding me? I can be creative too. And so he said, you've got a lot to contribute. You just don't talk about it. You just don't say what you could be. And I thought, maybe I can say things that matter as much as others. And so that was one transforming part of my life. The other was when I was very senior in the Pentagon. I had a study group of 25 admirals and generals, tough. I mean, these guys all believed in what they believed in, and there's no convincing them otherwise. We had a female who I had invited in to be with us for 2 years, to be the consolidator, to watch us. And she said to me, you are substandard. Me, I was the leader. Wait a minute, I'm not substandard. And she said, yeah. She said, you have a lot to say. You just don't say it. You hold back. She said, I watched some of your speeches. You read your speeches behind the dais. She said, I'll set up a couple of speeches for you and just go out and talk to the audience. Go out and be Bill Owens. Yeah. And so she did, and I did, and that changed my life. I thought to myself, as I was talking to these audiences, I can tell you something that is different. And so it's an element of confidence. I think it's confidence about who you are, what you can say, and you almost need someone like that person to say to you, you can do this. And many of us never have those people come along who say, you can do this. You can change the world.
Is it about you can do this, or someone telling you you're just no good, and then you're trying to prove them wrong?
I think those two things were very important, I mean, what do you mean I can't do this, right?
Yeah.
So it really is, it's a great journey. But I do think that a few of those instances, how many of us have a friend who will look at you and say, I don't think you're doing this right. I don't think your attitude is right. You don't belong here. You belong at some other place. And so,
but Bill, I mean, some of us have been very fortunate. I mean, I personally find that having you in my life has really given us so much of wisdom to me and our family. And I really feel that your influence on our family has been tremendous. And so I just, at the bottom of my heart, want to thank you for what you have done. But more importantly, I want to use this time for millions who are watching this. What is your advice to them? What could they be doing? Talk to them and say, hey, this is what the world you are in. You can make a difference. This is what you have to do. So talk to them like your children. What would you tell them today if they were your sons and daughters?
Yeah, well, the words that immediately come to mind are, I'm okay, you're okay.
Okay.
So there was a big movement in this country called EST in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people in America went off to EST sessions where they would convince each other that everybody in the room, they didn't know each other before, but I'm okay and you're okay. It doesn't matter who you are. I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're okay. And so first of all, let's get comfortable with the fact that people around you are okay and deserve to be listened to. And then I think it's really important to inspire your kids and others around to say this could be something really great. This can be a vision that does change the world. So as you know, I've done some things that are outrageously unlikely to succeed, bring the U.S. and China together. So I'm going to publish a book here in the next couple of months.
And what's the name of the book, Bill?
It's called China-U.S. 2039.
You want to give us a little bit of hint of what that will be about?
The end game, question mark.
Yeah.
And it means if you were able to look 20 years in the future, what would it look like, and what should we do in 2019 to make sure it looks the right way, given that that's the way it's going to look? So briefly, in 2039, the Chinese economy will be considerably larger than ours, and in buying power, it's likely to be much larger, 50% perhaps. Mm-hmm. And the middle class will be 600 million people. We have in this country maybe 250 million. And if they chose, they could by far have the largest, most capable military in the world. I think they will be as strong as we are in artificial intelligence, in the quantum sciences, in robotics, because they do have a vision, and you can see the visions playing out today, as you know, Naveen. So I think we need to step up to it and say, what do we do as our country to preserve everything we are, the great part of America, and be able to work as partners with China to make a difference. So we offer 11 suggestions of specific things we should do.
When you say we, you mean as a country?
We in this book, we in America as a country, yeah.
I'm thinking more about the people who are listening to it. I'm talking about an individual. I can't do anything to say what Trump should or should not do, but I know what I can do. So what will be your advice to people who are listening to this? They are your sons and daughters. Give them an advice that you would have given them when they were young.
So I think we should always, no matter whether it's a one-on-one with Bill and Naveen or whether it's a one-on-one with China and the United States, we should always understand the story from the other person's standpoint.
Yeah.
What does it look like from the Chinese standpoint, not from our standpoint? We think we know how to tell the story. It's absolutely objective. These are the facts, ma'am. That's all there is. That's not all there is. Those aren't the facts. the facts are really different as viewed from the other side. So I would say to my kids, always think about the other person's background, where they've come from, their story, why they're in this the way they are. And you are not in a position to judge who the hell they are. And we're not in a position as a country to judge who China is because we haven't lived what they've lived, and they haven't lived what we've lived. But telling the story from both sides is very important. And so how do we put ourselves in that position? I'm okay and you're okay, basically from both sides.
But it's very interesting, Bill. I mean, we showed the world that being capitalistic society is really the way to go, having this democratic idea of where everyone decides what's right for the things. And here we are starting to see this movement where we're starting to say, maybe there is another way. Maybe it is some mixture of socialism and capitalism. Maybe we need to have a capitalism with a heart, or you could say you need a socialism with a little bit of capitalism. I mean, are we all moving in the same direction now?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Naveen. My grandfather, when I was about 12, sat me down and said, I want you to remember nothing more about me than these words, Billy.
Which is what?
And he said, this country has been inalterably changed to become more like a communist nation because of one president, Franklin Roosevelt, who established the New Deal, established Social Security, started down the pathway to socialism. And he said, I want you to remember that as the years go on. And if you look at America today, in many ways, we have a lot of things that socialists believe in. Medicare, Medicaid, lots of other things that are there to take care of the least well-off in our societies. My grandfather would turn over in his grave if he could see how relatively socialist, social democracy-ist we are in America today. And so we are already headed down that pathway. Germany is a social democracy, as are many of the Scandinavian countries. And some of them turn out to be the happiest countries in the world, the Netherlands, Denmark, etc. So I think we need to see the other side of the story. And I'm not a socialist, I'm not a communist, but we need to see the other side of the story and remember who we are too. So President Xi Jinping talks about socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. And he is giving speeches around the world. Now, I don't believe in that. I want to tell your audience, I don't believe in that. But you got to listen to what he's saying. And he's not talking about communism. He's talking about socialism, democratic sort of socialism. I mean, there are 90 million people in the Communist Party. They do have a voice. And he's getting a lot of audiences in places like Australia and New Zealand to say democracy is not exactly working the way it should. And so there can be some improvements. So there can be something like a participative social democracy with Chinese characteristics. That means state-owned enterprises in the case of a developing country, because you need those to develop railroads and roads and other things that wouldn't happen otherwise. In a new era, which means all the technologies, so they need the new technologies for the new era. So if we understood truly in the spirit of what he's saying, rather than the words that we use about him, we might say, well, we should listen at least. And what we see in Washington is a bit of this gridlock, and it frustrates me, and I'm sure it frustrates you. And that's why we have the big debt that is also going to be a noose around our children's necks.
Well, I know you have to go, and you have been so kind to give us this time and really bless us with your wisdom. And a lot of the people are going to appreciate what you have just told them, and you're given a lot of food for thought here. And hopefully we'll continue this conversation some other time. But I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I have great admiration for what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.